Bite-Sized PL, professional learning you can consume at lunch, on a dog walk, or while you take a hike. I'm Kate, and my co-host today is Jeanette. We had the unique opportunity to hear from Sarah Frei at the R&R conference this summer. She is a former Clearfield High student who is currently studying to be a teacher at Utah State University.
My name is Sarah Frei, and I am 19 years old right now. I have always grown up in Davis County. I went to Bluffridge Elementary, Legacy Junior High, and then Clearfield High School. About 2 years ago, in July of 2020, I was with 3 of my friends. You may know some of these people: Tavy Davis, Brooke Watson, and Josh Harrison. These are some of my best friends, and we were all in Bear Lake together having, the best time. We were riding jet skis and playing in the sand and getting shakes. And we were coming home from Bear Lake through the Logan Canyon when we were hit head-on by a drunk driver. They estimated that the driver was going about 70 miles per hour around the bend and in about a 40 mile per hour zone, and hit into our car head-on. I was in the back passenger seat of the car. My friend Tavy was driving, Brooke was in the passenger, and then my friend Josh was sitting next to me. And luckily we were all alive, but the windshield was nearly touching my 2 friends in the front, nearly touching their faces. And we were all just trapped in the car. For those of you who have been in the Logan Canyon, there's like a drop-off on one side and then a mountain on the other side. And so Tavy didn't really have anywhere to go, so she just slammed on the brakes. I was instantly paralyzed from the waist down and had many internal injuries and was internally bleeding. My friend Tavy, who was driving, she broke her femur, which was a pretty bad break. She was in crutches for about 6 months. And then Brooke, she had abdominal and back wounds. And then Josh, he broke his collarbone and cracked his pelvis. And so he was the only one that was able to get out of the car. All of us were trapped. And so he got out of the car and was trying to see what he could do to help, but there was really nothing he could do. Luckily, there were amazing people around us that were trained for situations like these. There was a former EMT, there was a specially trained CNA, a pharmacist, and a special forces guy, and just incredible people that were around us to come kind of assess the situation. And then the ambulance took about an hour to get to us. And so when the ambulance finally got to us, they took us to the hospital in Logan, and they realized that my injuries, I had pretty severe injuries, and that I would need to be life-flighted to Primary Children's Hospital for more specialized care. And so I was given about 60 blood transfusions total, and they realized that my aorta was being pinched off, and so I wasn't getting any blood flow to either of my legs, and that they would both need to be amputated. And so it was at Primary Children's Hospital that my parents met me, but because of COVID, only one parent was allowed inside. And so my parents would switch off being with me every other day. There was only like a couple times that when they were switching, we got a couple pictures together. But my parents are so amazing, and they helped me through this whole thing. So I spent 5 weeks in the ICU, and then about 2 weeks just on the regular hospital floor, and then about 3 weeks in rehab, where I was doing physical therapy for about 3 to 4 hours every day. And so it was pretty intense, but they had a lot of special equipment that I used to just get myself stronger, because I couldn't really do anything. I couldn't lift up my arms to do my hair. I couldn't sit up in bed. I couldn't roll over. I had to relearn how to do almost everything. And so after the hospital stay, I was finally able to see my friends after a long 3 months, and that was so special, seeing all of them and seeing my whole family for the first time. And so I have been able to accomplish a lot of things since my crash. I was a senior when the accident happened, so I was 17 years old. And so I graduated high school. My counselors and my teachers in high school helped me so that I was able to graduate on time. And so I graduated high school, and then I started college at Utah State University, where I am studying elementary education to become a teacher. As I was preparing to go to college, I was like, okay, I think that I have everything down. I've practiced cooking by myself and doing my own laundry, and I was just kind of asking my parents, we were kind of talking through what all I would need to learn how to do before going to college by myself. Because this had just been like a year after the accident, and I was just finally starting to be independent. I was learning how to drive, and like I said, just practicing my independence. And I remember like when my parents would leave, I would try and cook by myself while they were gone, and I loved being home alone just to practice what it'll be like. And so then my dad was saying, like, I don't want to scare you, but what if you accidentally fall out of your chair and you need help getting back in? And I was like, you're right. Like, I have a couple friends that are going up to Utah State with me, but I want to be able to do it by myself. And so for the next couple of weeks and months, my dad and I, every night we would practice me getting from the floor into my chair. And the thing about my situation, so I would ask other people that were in wheelchairs, like some of my friends that I've met, and I would ask them, like, okay, how do you get from the floor to my chair, from the floor to your chair? And so they would send me a video of them doing it, and then I would try that way, the way that they did it, but I could never get it. Because most people in wheelchairs, they're either paralyzed and have their legs, or they're just amputees and not paralyzed. And so if you're just an amputee, normally you can like use your hips and like swing you up onto the couch and stuff, and it makes it, pretty easy to still be mobile. And then if you're paralyzed, you can have the leverage of your legs to like lean over and give you some stability. Even if you can't feel it, it's still there. And so I hadn't really met anyone in my situation at all, paralyzed and double amputee. And so everything that seemed to be working for other people didn't seem to be working for me. And I would get so frustrated. And I'm like, well, they just do it like this, but I can't because it's so hard for me. And so my dad and I would try and brainstorm and come up with a bunch of different ways for me to get up into my chair. We had one of those folding tumbling mats that we put, and I would hop up onto the tumbling mat and then try and hop up, but nothing seemed to be working. And so then one night at like 11 o'clock, I was like, I have a goal that I need to accomplish this before I go to college, and I leave for college in like 1 month, so I need to get this. And so it's like 11 o'clock at night, and my dad was up, and he was in the living room, and I said, Dad, I'm getting in my chair tonight. I'm getting from the floor to my chair tonight. And he's like, okay, let's do it. And so he was kind of pumping me up, and I changed my angle at which I approached my chair, and I held on like this, just right here in the front, and I lifted myself up and twisted myself in. And I had never seen anyone do that, but I did it, and I was able to get up into my chair all by myself. And I was so happy and so proud of myself that I was able to do it, and it wasn't like anyone else had ever shown me, and something that no one else can even do. Like if you have the legs, you can't do what I did. And so it was amazing, and I was so happy. And so this is like me mid-swinging up into my chair. But I did it, and it made me so happy, and I just hugged my dad, and we cried, and I was like, okay, now I can go to college. And I just had to change the approach in which I got up into my chair, and it worked. And it wasn't something that had worked for anyone else, and all of their ways didn't work for me. And so sometimes things may seem to work for other people, but don't work for you. And so we all need to find out what works for us, because that will be, what makes us happy, and the things that we love will be individualized, because we all have special gifts that we have that are very different from our neighbor and our sister and our mom. They're all so different. We're all so different, and we need to use that to our advantage and figure out the ways that we can do things. And so it's all about finding new ways, and that is how we will be the most help to our students, is if we find the ways that work for us.
After listening to her inspiring keynote, Jeanette and I sat down with Sarah to talk about her journey to becoming a teacher. We have a special guest with us today. We're super excited to welcome Sarah Frei. Welcome. We're so thrilled you're here.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
Yes. So Sarah Frei graduated from Clearfield High School in 2001. Is that right?
2021, yeah.
2000. Not 2001. Excuse me.
Time flies.
2021.
Time flies. Sarah Frei graduated from Clearfield in 2021 and just finished her freshman year at Utah State in their education program. Is that correct? Awesome. We just had the pleasure of listening to your keynote speech at the R&R conference, and your message about determination and mindset was just so inspiring. So thank you so much for that message.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
We want to focus our message today on your experience as a student and your favorite teachers and some of the things you're learning in school to become a teacher.
Yeah, for sure.
We know that anyone who is a teacher or who has ever thought about teaching has a story, and it's usually about a teacher that inspired them at some point in their life to become a teacher or to look into that profession. Do you have a story like that, or about a teacher or a situation?
All of my teachers were so amazing. I had a second grade teacher named Mrs. Dilly, and I just felt like she was like my best friend. Like, I would want to stay in from recess just so I could talk to her. And sometimes she would let me, and I just loved that. And I just felt like I could tell her anything, and she just made me feel so loved. Like, I loved going to school in second grade. Right when I would come home from school, just in her classroom, I would play school with my friends, and I would be the teacher, and I would have the whiteboard, and my friends would be my kids, and I would always just pretend to be her, kind of. And so she was just like my idol, basically. And so that's kind of why I want to teach second grade or third, just because I loved, that time when I was a kid. But I had the most amazing teachers all through elementary school. Like, my 5th and 6th grade teachers, Mrs. Baird and Mrs. Basiso, they're all the best.
I love your story about being inspired about being a teacher from a young age. And I can remember my 3rd grade teacher used to send me home with extra handouts. This was a long, long time ago. And I would write the name of students at the tops of them, and I would do the student work, and then I would go through and correct it.
Yeah.
And then I remember I had a binder that had the names of all the students with squares, and I would put scores in. I didn't become a math teacher. I became an English teacher, but I just loved that process of teaching, being the teacher, and having the little students, and it never changed. So I pretended for about a year in college that I was a journalism major, and then I was like, no.
Teaching's where it's at.
Once you kind of get the bug, or you have the feeling that that's kind of a calling, then that's where you're headed.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about high school and what you saw teachers doing at Clearfield High School that really benefited you as a student. Because junior high and high school are tough years for students. We're trying to figure out who we are, what our strengths are, deal with our emotions, etc. So can you remember any specific things that teachers did, the way they treated students or took care of students that really benefited you or those around you?
My math teacher in my sophomore year, she made me love math just because she just reminded me kind of like my mom, just like super sweet. She had a couple kids, and she would just want everyone to pass her class, and she would just walk around the room, and it was just so individual. She would just always make sure that I'm doing good, not just as a class we're doing good. I even went out to lunch with her the other day, and I know we'll just stay in contact forever just because she meant so much to me, and she was the teacher that made me enjoy math. I wanted to come to school so that I could do math, to have her as my teacher instead of like dreading it. So she just was amazing and just made everyone feel so loved.
I love that. That reminds me, I had an English teacher like that in high school, and I remember I went through a bad breakup, and I came into class, and how she knew, I don't know. Probably because I was crying dramatically, I can't remember. But I remember she came up to me and looked me right in the eyes and said, "Are we fine?" And I was like, oh my gosh, she's breaking the grammar rules, saying, "Are we fine? What does that even mean?" But I was so...
We're obviously not.
I was so touched that she cared personally about my experience.
Yeah.
And wanted to check in with me emotionally.
Yeah. I would always talk to her about boys too. Just like,
Yes.
yeah, she was so involved. I loved it.
Maybe a follow-up on your high school experience. When you came back from your accident, did you see school differently? Did you notice students who struggled differently than you had before? Because we all have hard things, but you came back from an extremely hard thing, and I'm just wondering if you saw other students or people with hard things in a new light.
Yeah. I remember thinking like a lot of students are probably struggling a lot more than we think they are. And so people are just struggling like mentally to get their schoolwork done. And so it's important to have teachers who, make sure you're okay and make sure that you're doing well so that everyone gets the help that they need.
Well, and you know that you will have a unique perspective as a teacher, having gone through such a hard thing. Your students will believe you when you say to them, you can do this, you can get through this. And that will change lives.
I love that. Yeah.
So I know that you just finished your first year of college, so that you might not be in a lot of education classes specifically, but I'm curious if there are things about your college experience so far that get you excited about being a teacher.
Yeah, so the first semester of college, I just was taking like generals. And then my second semester, I started getting into the elementary education courses. I was taking an LED 1010 class, like human development, just those things. And the way that I would feel in those classrooms was way different. Like I just enjoyed it. I wanted to learn more. I would take so many notes. I would go home and study them. And I would ace all the tests just because I loved learning about that stuff. And so just kind of recognizing the way that I felt during those classes rather than like the other ones that I had to do was like confirmation that I really love this, and I just love kids and how their brain works and stuff. I just learned so many cool things that I'm excited to have be applied in my life.
There's nothing more than that Jeanette and I love more than talking about learning. So we can absolutely
do it all day long.
And we do. And we do.
We usually like to end each episode with a gift from our guests, something that you're loving right now that you want to share with our listeners. So do you have something in mind?
My favorite show right now that I would definitely recommend is called This Is Us on Hulu. Me and my mom are just getting to the very last episodes. The series is ending.
So many tears.
And we're very upset about it. We're kind of dragging it out so that it won't end. But I would definitely recommend that show. It's something that I love right now.
Yeah, one of my daughters is making me finish because I kind of got behind among the 6 seasons, but I've been going back and getting back into the family dynamics. It's a fun, emotional journey, isn't it? Yeah. Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
Of course.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing your thoughts, Sarah. We appreciate you being here with us today.
Of course.
As always, thanks to our producer, Tom, for making us sound so good. Thanks for joining us. Please like and subscribe and share the podcast with others. We'll see you at school.